They told me not to come here. Every damn regulation, every intergalactic treaty, every whisper behind the Council's closed doors screamed off limits. They'd marked this world in red, forbidden. No flyovers, no scans, no ground teams, and definitely no humans setting foot on its surface. So naturally, I volunteered. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't brave. I just had nothing left to lose. Earth was a shadow of itself. The Unified Species Coalition had gutted us after the resource conflicts, stripped our fleets, banned most of our tech, and called us too dangerous to govern ourselves. Now we were scavengers, humans begging for crumbs in space stations built by species that once trembled at the sound of our engines. I was born in one of those floating ghettos, steel corridors, recycled air, powdered protein twice a day if you were lucky. My father died fixing a vent system. My mother disappeared trying to bribe a coalition officer for medicine. I watched my brother rot in a prison cell for stealing spare parts. So when the coalition posted a bounty mission to map a dead zone near the outer rim, hazard pay included, I didn't think twice. And when my ship's scanner picked up faint coordinates leading to an undocumented world pulsing with strange energy, I punched in the landing codes and went silent. They can't punish what they don't know. The moment my boots touched that soil, I felt it in my bones. This place was alive. Not in the floral and fauna sense. I mean, the air itself buzzed, like it knew me, like it had seen what I'd done, who I was, and was trying to decide if I deserved to breathe it. The terrain was wrong. Black sand dunes that moved when you weren't watching. Trees that looked like they were grown from metal and bone. The sky was dark purple, but no sun. Just swirling clouds and something bright behind them that never showed its face. I took 6 steps before my comms fried. Static. Then a voice. Not in my ear, but inside my head. "You are not welcome here, human." I froze, pulled out my pulse pistol, and scanned the area. Nothing. No heat signatures, no life forms. My HUD glitched, then went black. My heart slammed in my chest like a war drum. I should have turned back. I should have begged my ship's AI to lift off without me and send a distress beacon. But something about that voice. It didn't scare me. It sounded old. Tired. Like a god with a grudge. "You've come for power like the rest of your kind." I spat on the ground. "No," I said out loud. "I came because I don't belong anywhere else." The wind answered. A violent gust slammed me against a jagged rock formation, slicing open the side of my head. Blood dripped into the sand and hissed like acid. I felt my limbs go numb, like the planet was tasting me, figuring out if I was worth digesting. Then, just as quickly, the pain stopped, and everything around me changed. The sky cracked open. For a moment, I saw through the clouds, towers made of light, floating ruins that whispered in forgotten languages, massive shapes moving through the sky like gods drowning in sorrow. The landscape pulsed beneath my feet. And then, it welcomed me. The voice returned, softer this time. "You carry pain, loss, rage. You do not fear death. That is why you may stay." I collapsed to my knees, breathing heavy, gripping the soil in my fists. It felt like permission, like this cursed planet had looked into my soul and found something it respected. Not kindness, not goodness, but raw, brutal survival. I wasn't supposed to make it, not here, not anywhere. But this world, this forbidden place, had seen what the Coalition didn't. A human who wouldn't kneel, wouldn't break, wouldn't ask for a second chance. Only take it, and that's exactly what I planned to do. I didn't move for what felt like hours. I just sat there in that cursed sand, blood drying on my temple, heart pounding like it wanted to tear its way out of my chest. The world wasn't killing me, Not yet. That meant something. I was still alive. And out here, that was the only win that mattered. The silence returned, but it wasn't empty this time. It was heavy, the kind that presses on your shoulders and whispers behind your ears. Every breath I took felt like I was inhaling someone else's memory. Pain clung to the air like mist, old, violent pain, and I was breathing it in like it belonged to me. Maybe it did. My suit was half fried from the landing, helmet cracked, comms dead, HUD flickering like it was trying to decide whether to give up completely. My pulse pistol still worked, barely, but it felt useless out here, like trying to punch a ghost. I stood up slowly, wiping the blood from my cheek with the back of my glove. The wound had stopped bleeding, and my head didn't feel like it was splitting open anymore. That was a miracle in itself. "All right," I muttered. "You didn't kill me, now what?" The landscape didn't answer. Figures. I picked a direction and started walking. North, if directions meant anything on this planet. The terrain wasn't stable. It shifted under my boots like sand that was pretending to be solid. I could feel it. Some kind of sentient awareness under the ground, watching, waiting, judging. Everything on this world was aware of me. That much was clear. About an hour in, I saw it. A structure. Not made by humans, not even close. It looked ancient, but not in the way ruins crumble from age. It was intact, pristine almost, like time avoided it out of respect or fear. It towered above the dunes, built from obsidian black stone veined with pulsing blue light. No seams, no doors, just walls that seemed to hum with restrained energy. I felt drawn to it like a magnet to a buried mine. The voice returned. "You walk the path of the exiled." I stopped cold. "The others came with weapons. You came with wounds." It wasn't just talking to me. It was inside me, digging around in places I'd buried under years of bitterness and cold survival. I felt my stomach turn, like it was unearthing things I didn't want to remember. "You came with pain. That is why the world allows you to pass." I clenched my jaw. Then it must be real generous. No response? Typical. I approached the structure slowly. The closer I got, the more the buzzing in my head intensified, like a hive of hornets had nested in my skull. But I didn't stop. Pain I could handle. Regret, guilt, anger, they were old friends. They didn't scare me, not like being forgotten, not like being nothing. When I reached the structure, the wall in front of me shimmered. A slit opened vertically, just wide enough for one person to pass. I didn't even hesitate. I stepped inside. Instant darkness, no lights, no sound. Just the slow, rhythmic pulse of that blue vein-like glow tracing the walls and ceiling. The hallway seemed to go on forever, but my feet kept moving, like something in the air was pulling me deeper. My instincts screamed trap. My gut said destiny. I trusted neither, but I kept going. Eventually, the corridor opened into a chamber. Massive, a cathedral of forgotten gods. And at the center, floating several feet above the ground, was a sphere, roughly the size of a human head, completely still. It emitted a low hum that vibrated in my chest. It wasn't tech. It wasn't magic. It was something else. As I stepped closer, my suit flickered and went dead completely. Life support, armor, everything, just gone. I stood there in the raw air of this forbidden world, breathing in whatever it gave me, and stared at the sphere like it was a mirror to something I couldn't explain. The voice returned again. This time, deeper. "Touch it?" I hesitated. Not because I was afraid to die, but because for the first time in years I was afraid something might change me, and I didn't know what was left to change. But I reached out anyway. My fingers brushed the surface, and everything exploded, not outward, inward. A surge of images slammed into my mind, worlds burning, civilizations collapsing, beings of impossible form waging wars that spanned galaxies, and always, in the background, watching silently, was this planet, this forgotten world, like a sentinel, a judge. And then I saw them. Humans, soldiers, scientists, thieves. All of them had come here before, all of them had touched the sphere, and all of them had died. Except me. The energy coursed through my veins like molten fire, and I dropped to my knees, screaming. My eyes burned, my chest felt like it was caving in, but I couldn't stop it, couldn't pull away. The planet was pouring itself into me. Every secret, every sorrow, every damned mistake made by those who tried to take without giving. Then it stopped. Silence again. But this time it was different. It felt like I'd been accepted, like the world had claimed me. The sphere vanished into dust, and the chamber went dark. When I stood up, I was no longer the same man. I could feel things, the walls, the air. Even the ground beneath my boots wasn't just dirt anymore. It was memory. Everything here had a voice, and now I could hear them all. Outside the chamber, I emerged into the dark sky again. But now it wasn't hostile. The sand moved aside when I walked. The wind wrapped around me like a cloak. The world wasn't watching me anymore. It was walking with me. That's when I knew. This place wasn't just forbidden. It was sacred. And I hadn't just survived it. I'd become part of it. But that's when the real trouble started. My ship's emergency beacon had activated the moment I stepped through that corridor, probably triggered by my suit's fail-safes. That meant someone would be coming. Someone from the Coalition. Maybe a recon drone. Maybe a death squad. Either way, they'd know I'd broken the rules. And if this world had any value at all, and it did, they'd want to silence me. Bury the truth. Pretend it never happened. But I wasn't the same man anymore. Let them come. The sky hadn't changed, but I had. That damned purple haze still loomed above me like a bruise on the face of the universe, and those clouds, thick, writhing things, shifted as if something massive was swimming just behind them. But I no longer felt like an outsider here. I wasn't some trespasser waiting to be punished. The world had accepted me, whatever that meant, whatever I had become. The hum of energy still buzzed faintly in my bones. Every breath I took felt denser, like I was drinking oxygen instead of inhaling it. I could sense things now, subtle shifts in the ground, the temperature of the wind, the presence of movement far beyond normal sight. It wasn't power, it was understanding, and that terrified me more than any weapon ever had. I reached the ridge where my ship had landed. The sight nearly stopped my heart. Smoke. Thin black columns curling up into the already dark sky. The ship was gone. Just twisted metal and charred fragments strewn across the sand. I moved fast, scanning the wreckage with my newly sharpened instincts. This wasn't a crash, it was surgical. Something had cut through my ship like it was paper. No blast marks, no shrapnel, just clean, precise destruction. They'd already come. Not the Coalition. Not yet. No, this was something older, quieter, something that didn't want attention. And they knew I'd survived. I spotted a piece of the hull half buried under the sand, the edges still glowing faintly blue. Not from fire, but energy. The same kind that had surged through the structure I'd touched. They'd used this technology against me. Or maybe not against me. Maybe this was a warning. A message. Something had followed me out of that chamber. Something not human. The realization sank in slow and cold. I wasn't alone anymore, and not in the comforting way. I turned, eyes scanning the dunes. The wind had gone still. That wasn't right. The planet always moved, always pulsed. But now it was waiting, like it was hiding something from me. You shouldn't have touched it. The voice came from behind me, calm, too calm. I turned fast, pulse pistol raised. Pure reflex, even though I already knew it wouldn't matter. The figure stood about 30 feet away, at the base of a dead obsidian tree. Human in shape, but wrong in the details. Too still, too symmetrical. Its skin shimmered faintly like heat waves. No armor, no weapon. Just a long, dark robe that shifted like liquid in the lightless air. "I didn't come to ask permission," I said, leveling the pistol. It didn't flinch, didn't blink. "You carry its mark now, that makes you dangerous. You burned my ship. I saved your life. That threw me." "The retrieval drone was already en route," it continued. "Had it reached you before the fusion began, you'd be ash, or worse." I narrowed my eyes. "What the hell are you?" It tilted its head slightly. "A sentry, one of the last." "Of what?" There was a pause. A stillness that felt older than time. "We were the ones who built the cage." The words hit like thunder. "You mean this planet?" The thing beneath it." My breath caught. "Something's buried here." "It's not buried," the figure said. "It's contained, chained, watched. This world is not forbidden because of what's on it, but because of what it holds." I lowered the pistol slowly. "You mean that sphere? The structure?" "That was merely a key, a memory shard, a fragment of what was used to seal the mind of the entity. But you've activated it." I shook my head. "I didn't do anything." "You survived. That is enough. The others tried to control it, to extract it, to weaponize it. Let me guess, they all died." The figure's face didn't move, but somehow I felt the nod. "They died in agony," it said. "But you didn't. The entity, it responded to your pain, your hatred. You were compatible." I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was so damn typical. Of course, humanity would get tangled in some ancient interstellar nightmare because someone like me, a broken, angry nobody, just happened to survive something he shouldn't have. "What does it want?" I asked quietly. The figure's voice dropped lower. "Freedom." I felt the words sink into my bones. Freedom. Not peace, not justice, not understanding. Just the raw, terrifying desire to be loose. "And you're here to stop it?" I asked. "I was. Once. But now, it's inside you." I stiffened. "I don't feel possessed." "You aren't," it said. "You're merged, symbiotic. The fusion was incomplete but irreversible. You carry its echo, its sight, its knowledge. If the Council finds you, they will not ask questions. They will erase you, and then they will bomb this world into glass." I stared at the smoldering wreckage of my ship. "So what now? I run? Live out my days hiding in slums until some bounty hunter puts a round in my spine?" The figure looked up at the sky. You learn. You master what you've been given. You prepare." "For what?" "For when it wakes." I swallowed hard. My fingers tightened around the grip of my weapon even though I knew it wouldn't do a damn thing here. "There's more like you," it said after a long silence. "Scattered, hidden, the failed hosts, the broken vessels, all of them pieces of something far bigger." "How many?" "Thousands." "Human?" "No." That part didn't surprise me, but what it said next did. "But it chose your kind for a reason." I met its gaze. Because we're easy to break? No, it whispered, because you don't stay broken. I didn't know how to respond to that. For the first time in years, I felt something close to pride, not for who I was, but for what we'd endured, what humanity had become. They could strip our fleets, starve our colonies, cage our history in shame and lies, but they couldn't erase us. Not really. We were still here, and maybe, just maybe, we were meant for more than they wanted to believe. The figure took a step back. My task is done. You're the last one who will receive the key. After this, the system will erase all coordinates. You will not find your way back here. Wait, you're just leaving? You are not alone, it said. You'll feel the others when the time is right. And then it was gone. No flash, no sound, just gone. Like it had never been there. I stood there a long time, staring at the black sky, the wind slowly picking back up. The planet was breathing again, watching me. I turned away from the wreckage and started walking. Not aimlessly this time. I had direction, purpose, and somewhere in my blood, in the marrow of my bones, the entity stirred. Not screaming, not clawing, just watching, waiting. I didn't know what it wanted yet, but I knew what I wanted. To survive, to fight, to make them understand that we, the broken, the discarded, the angry, were not done. They made the mistake of thinking humanity was weak, but we were never weak. We were just waiting. I walked until my legs burned and the sky started bleeding red. The purple hue I'd grown used to was gone now, replaced with streaks of deep crimson cutting through dark clouds. The sun, if that's what it was, had finally decided to show itself. Not a star, not a flame, but a massive eye-shaped blaze on the horizon. Unblinking, unmoving, watching. It felt like judgment, or maybe warning. This planet had changed its skin. Maybe to protect me, or maybe to prepare me. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. My suit's life support was still dead, and the rations had been in the ship when it burned. But I didn't feel hunger the way I used to. My stomach growled, sure, but it didn't cripple me. The fusion, whatever that bastard in the robe called it, had done something more than link my mind to some buried entity. It had rewired me. My hearing was sharper. I could pick up the low-frequency hums beneath the surface, like distant generators buried deep inside the world, or veins, pulsing, moving. I couldn't tell anymore. My vision flickered in the dark, and in full daylight I didn't need to squint. Everything was clearer, more alive. I wasn't just surviving this place, I was becoming it. But I wasn't the only one watching the sky change. I felt the ripple before I saw the ship. A vibration through the ground, far too smooth to be natural, mechanical, cold, measured. I dropped to my knees, pressed my palm into the sand, and waited. There it was again. A low tremor, followed by a short ping inside my skull. They'd arrived. Coalition. Not scouts, not a research crew. This was a response unit. Elite, silent. The kind they deployed when someone broke a galactic law so big it couldn't be left in a report. And stepping foot on this world, that wasn't a crime. It was blasphemy. I climbed the ridge and spotted them. A small, sleek black ship. No insignia, no flags, just matte plating and cloaked drones circling like vultures. It hadn't landed. It had injected itself into the surface, half buried with precision. There were no loading ramps, no hatches, just a side panel that opened like a wound, and 4 figures stepping out in staggered formation. No words, no chatter, just efficiency. They moved in sync, human-shaped but not human. Armor that looked like living bone, helmets that curled up into sharp, fang-like ridges. Standard Coalition enforcers were robotic, soulless, trigger-happy. These guys? They were something worse. They were quiet. And they were sentient. The one in front turned slightly toward my position, though I was hidden behind a cluster of cracked stone. I froze, my breath shallow. I could hear the faint crunch of gravel under their boots, and in the back of my head, something slithered. A whisper, not in words, in instinct. Kill them. Rip the knowledge from their skulls. They are not worthy of this ground. The entity inside me was stirring. Not in control, not yet, but awake, like blood in boiling water, bubbling to the surface. I gritted my teeth and shut it out. Not yet, I whispered. We're not doing that, not until we know what they want. The wind picked up again, laced with dust that stung the eyes. The figures paused as if sensing the shift. The lead enforcer tilted its helmet upward. Right toward me. They'd found me. I didn't run. Instead, I stood up slowly from behind the rocks, my silhouette full in the red-tinged light. I held the pulse pistol low at my side, deactivated. Empty. Pointless. They didn't raise their weapons. The lead figure took a step forward. Subject 47, human, male, unauthorized planetary contact, immediate containment required. The voice wasn't mechanical. It was worse. Emotionless, like a voice box reading a eulogy it didn't understand. I didn't send an RSVP, I said flatly. Didn't know the party was this exclusive. The figure cocked its head. Almost curious. You are in possession of class biomorphic integration. Your physiology is unstable. You pose an existential threat to regulated coalition space. That a fancy way of saying I'm a loose end? You are a virus. And let me guess, you're the cure. For a second, they didn't move. Then they charged. Not all four, just the leader. The damn thing moved like smoke. Fast, quiet, unstoppable. 1 second, 20 yards away. The next, on me. Its fist came down like a wrecking ball. I dove to the side, rolled, came up behind a jagged ridge, and it was already there. It slammed into me with enough force to crack ribs and bury me half a foot into the ground. Stars flashed in my eyes. The pistol flew from my grip. I heard the others closing in, weapons humming, and that's when I let go. I didn't have a plan. I just stopped resisting. The hum in my bones roared to life, and for a split second, the world slowed. Not in the way adrenaline does, but like gravity itself had paused to watch. My hand reached up, not mine anymore, not fully. Energy crawled down my arm, black, shimmering with veins of red and violet, and when I touched the enforcer's chest plate, it melted. It didn't explode. It disintegrated, collapsing inward like reality had been peeled from its atoms. The enforcer let out a half sound, like a scream caught halfway between terror and confusion. And then he was gone. Dust. I stood up slowly. The other three hesitated. Last warning, I said, my voice different, layered. Turn around or follow him. One of them raised their weapon. I didn't wait. The ground answered me this time. It opened. Tendrils, roots, wires, maybe something worse, shot up from beneath the surface and yanked the closest enforcer underground. No blood, no scream, just swallowed. The last two finally turned to run. Cowards. Smart cowards. I stood alone in the red light again, breathing hard, buzzing with energy, with power, and with something else. Fear. Not for me. But for what this meant. I'd just killed trained coalition hunters without breaking a sweat, not because I was special, but because something ancient had claimed me, and I was starting to want to claim it back. That scared me. I found the wreckage of the enforcer ship and went inside. It wasn't locked. It didn't need to be. Coalition confidence had always been their biggest weakness. Inside, I found files, audio logs. I plugged one into the backup comm unit in my half-broken suit. A voice crackled through, human, older, gruff. They're waking up. The ancient sites, the ones we sealed, they're humming again. It started with the human colonies, but now the signals are coming from everywhere. The biomorphic interface isn't just reacting, it's activating. We need to act before another one bonds. The file timestamp? 3 weeks before I landed here. They knew. They'd known what this planet was doing, what others like it might be doing, and they tried to keep it quiet, tried to stop anyone from surviving long enough to talk. I looked down at my hands, still glowing faintly, still changing. I wasn't human anymore, not fully, but I still had my mind, my will, my anger, and I was done running. Let them come. Let them send more hunters, more ships, more death squads. I would burn every one of them, not for revenge, not even for survival, but to remind the galaxy, humanity doesn't die quietly. I didn't sleep, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. Whatever the entity had done to me, rewiring my biology, fusing its presence with my body, it had rewritten everything, including the basic rhythms of life. Fatigue came in waves, dull and brief, then passed like a flicker of shadow. My eyes didn't blur, my muscles didn't ache. I didn't crave food or warmth. I was built to endure now. And endurance was going to matter, because something under the surface was moving. It started as a vibration in my chest. At first, I thought it was just the last of the coalition tech fading out, maybe some feedback loop from the pulse fields. But when I put my palm to the ground, I felt it again. A pulse. Rhythmic. Steady. Like a heartbeat. It came every 20 seconds. Faint at first. Then louder. Then deeper. The planet wasn't just watching me anymore. It was waking up. And I wasn't sure if that meant salvation or apocalypse. I scavenged what I could from the dead enforcer ship. Power cells. Comms modules. A clean HUD visor that synced with my neural interface like it had been waiting for me. Their ship's AI was wiped. Standard protocol in case of hostile contamination. But one file remained. Encrypted. Old. It wasn't coalition, not even military. This was pre-Union, a black file from the old Earth Security Syndicate, back before we became the pariah species. Before they shattered our fleets and scattered us into slums. The file was titled simply OBLIVIONPROTOCOL. It required a neural key to open. The moment I touched the interface, it accepted me. And that's when I learned the truth. This planet wasn't the first. Humanity had stumbled across a similar world decades ago. A lifeless moon orbiting a dying red star. A mining crew discovered strange ruins buried beneath the surface. They went missing. Then a rescue crew followed. Same result. But one survivor returned. He was changed, not in body. His scans came back clean. But mentally he was something else. They called it entity drift. He spoke in languages no one taught him, wrote coordinates in his sleep, screamed names of worlds humanity had never discovered. Then he killed 17 people in a locked room and vanished off-world. The Syndicate hunted him for 9 years. They never found him. But before he disappeared, he left behind a message. The old blood waits beneath the roots. It dreams in silence, and the silence is breaking. That was the last line of the file. I stood there in the ruins of that enforcer ship, visor flickering red from the low sky above me, and I knew I wasn't the first. But I would damn well be the last, because I wasn't going to run. I was going to finish it. I followed the heartbeat, down into the canyon where the rocks no longer looked natural. They were too sharp, too uniform. Like teeth. The walls of the ravine narrowed with every mile. At one point, I had to crawl through a narrow gap that hummed with static. My skin buzzed as I passed through it. Whatever this place was, it had defenses. But they didn't stop me. They recognized me now. The final stretch was a descent, a massive staircase carved from obsidian that spiraled into the black. There were no lights, no handrails, just symbols along the walls, pulsing softly as I passed, like they were breathing. Every step I took, the voice in my head grew louder. Not words, memories, a war, not between nations or species, but between realities. The entity. It wasn't a god, it wasn't a demon, it was an exile, cast out from something bigger, something even it feared. And now it wanted back in. I reached the bottom of the spiral. A chamber waited for me, bigger than anything I'd seen so far, miles wide, the ceiling lost in shadows. At the center stood a monument, or maybe a coffin, a massive floating cube of black stone suspended in the air by tendrils of red lightning. Beneath it, glyphs pulsed, patterns I didn't recognize but somehow understood. Containment, warning, and at the center of that cube was it, not fully formed, not yet, but aware. It knew I was there, and it was happy. That scared me more than the enforcers ever could. I approached the cube slowly. Every step triggered a flash, images slicing through my mind like blades. A city burning, children screaming, an entire fleet turning on itself, ripping itself apart with friendly fire. And always, in the background, that thing. Watching. Not because it enjoyed the suffering, but because it wanted to understand it. Feed on it. The glyphs flared brighter as I neared. My skin cracked along my arms, black light spilling from the veins like ink. It didn't hurt, not yet, but I knew the price was coming. "You were made for this," the voice said at last. This time it spoke in full, not in fragments, not in instincts. It addressed me. "You are the wound, the rot, the defiance. You are the proof that they failed to erase your kind." "Why me?" I asked out loud. "Because you don't want peace. You want revenge." It wasn't wrong. "You're not offering answers," I said. "You're just offering fire." "I am fire." "Then burn alone." Silence. For a second, I thought I'd pushed it back, thought I'd shut it up. Then the cube cracked, just a hairline fracture. But enough. The glyphs around me exploded in light. The whole chamber trembled, the lightning arcing around the cube turned red hot, and something moved inside it. Not a creature, not a face, just a shape, a presence, and it was coming free. I raised my hand, half human, half something else now, and reached toward the fracture. "I won't be your vessel," I said. "You already are." "Number, I'm your warden." Then I poured everything I had into the glyphs, the knowledge it gave me, the energy it infected me with, the hatred, the pain. I turned it all back against the cage, reinforcing it, strengthening the chains. And it fought back. The pain hit instantly, white-hot, like my brain was boiling inside my skull. Blood poured from my nose, my vision turned black, my teeth cracked, but I held on. Because this wasn't just for me, this was for the people we lost, the ones the Coalition erased, the ones we forgot. We'd been the villains of the galaxy long enough. Now we were the only thing holding the gate shut. And I would not fail. When it was done, I collapsed. The cube sealed again. The glyphs dimmed. The voice was gone. And I was bleeding into the stone. But I was alive. Not whole, not human. But something new. The first and last of my kind. A warning, a weapon, a reminder. I wasn't unconscious, but I might as well have been. Lying flat on the stone floor of that underground tomb, body twitching, blood seeping from my ears and mouth, I couldn't tell whether I was still alive or just trapped between worlds. The glyphs around me pulsed in slow, fading rhythms. Faint now. Quiet. Like a heart that had stopped beating but hadn't yet accepted death. My body didn't move right. My limbs weren't broken, but they didn't feel like mine anymore. I'd sealed the fracture in the cube. Barely. But the price was written all over me. My veins were darker now, like they were filled with black smoke instead of blood. My eyes stung when I blinked. My thoughts came fractured, skipping across the surface of memory like stones across a poisoned lake. And yet even in that state, I felt it. Above me, orbiting the upper stratosphere, ships were gathering. I didn't need radar. I didn't need surveillance. I could sense the weight of them. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Coalition cruisers, Dread-class enforcers, civilian blockade frigates loaded with cloaked orbital mines. The sky was choking on war. They knew. They knew I was alive. They knew what I'd become. And they weren't here to ask questions. They were here to erase me. I stood up slowly, dragging my palm along the cold floor as I forced myself upright. My legs buckled, then steadied. Each breath tasted of iron and old stone. The chamber behind me still hummed faintly, as if aware of my suffering. "You're late," I muttered, lifting my gaze toward the red-lit tunnel. The planet didn't answer, but I didn't expect it to. I wasn't here to beg it for help anymore. I was its last defense, and possibly its last mistake. Surface side, the sky cracked open, not visually. There were no explosions, no orbital strikes, not yet. But every molecule in the air changed. Every atom vibrated with suppressed energy. The air pressure shifted. The clouds pulled into strange spirals. Then came the first tremor. Tiny, almost polite. Then the second. Much stronger, and with it came the voice again. "They bring the fire you rejected. Will you run, or burn with them?" "No," I whispered to myself, walking slowly through the dunes toward the ridge overlooking the sky. "I'll fight them." From the peak, I saw the first of their ships descend. It was massive. Oval-shaped, like a polished obsidian heart, lined with spines that rotated in concentric rings. Coalition design, but modified. Stripped of insignia. These weren't just warships. These were erasure units, designed not to defeat, not to capture, but to cleanse. I didn't wait. I reached out with my senses, those sharpened instincts that now connected me to something buried beneath reality, and listened. The planet responded. It didn't speak in words. It spoke in movement. The ground trembled again, then split. Obsidian pillars rose from beneath the sand, long spear-like constructs glowing with the same blue-veined energy I'd seen in the Forbidden Chamber. They weren't weapons in the conventional sense. They were memory towers, pieces of a defense system long dormant. The planet hadn't used them because it hadn't needed to. But now, it was awakening them for me. "Let's make this hurt," I growled. The towers lit up. Streams of energy burst into the sky, not like missiles, not like lasers. These were beacons, signals, carried on frequencies no one had used in millennia, and the effect was immediate. The lead coalition cruiser began to tilt, its shields faltering, engines flickering. A shimmer rippled along its hull, and pieces of its armor peeled off like burnt skin. Screams crackled through their emergency broadcasts. Not human screams, alien. But pain was universal. The tower had weaponized remembrance, broadcasting raw memory directly into their minds. Not thoughts, not images, feelings, fear, loss, regret. All the emotional detritus the entity had buried in me was now being projected back into them. And they couldn't handle it. One ship lost control and veered off course, smashing into the atmosphere at an angle. It ignited like a meteor, roaring across the sky in a trail of fire. The other ships pulled back, unsure. Their formations stuttered. But the hesitation didn't last. The second wave was already coming, faster, colder. Drones, thousands of them, black, silent, coordinated. I saw them crest the clouds like a swarm of locusts. No sound, no exhaust trails, just a synchronized descent straight for the towers. I sprinted. I didn't know what I was doing. There were no manuals for this kind of war. But my instincts burned with clarity. I could feel the enemy's position. I could sense their formations, and I could answer. I stretched out my arm toward the nearest tower. The veins in my wrist glowed bright red, and the glyphs along the pillar responded instantly. A flash, a tremor. Then the tower split in half, its core rising from within like a cannon made of thought. When the drones reached within 50 meters, the tower fired. Not a beam, not a bullet, but a shockwave of distorted time. Everything in its radius slowed. Not just visually, fundamentally. The drones twisted in mid-air, their frames aging and rusting in seconds. Circuits popped, hulls collapsed. Dozens fell like stones, slamming into the sand below, twitching, dead. I reached out to the other towers, linked them. Each one pulsed with me, and suddenly I wasn't just fighting, I was conducting. The battlefield wasn't sand and fire, it was memory, and I was the orchestra of its fury. More drones dropped, ships realigned, missiles launched, some hit. One tower exploded behind me, sending shards of obsidian raining across the dunes. I felt the shock in my ribs, the burn across my arm. Skin tore, blood spilled, but I kept moving, because I was never going to die on my knees. This was what they feared. Not the entity, not the power. Me, a human, a survivor, a threat, and they were right to be afraid. But then, the towers stopped glowing. One by one, their cores dimmed, not destroyed, just shut down, no warning, just silence. And I knew it was her, the Coalition's last resort. She didn't arrive in a ship. She didn't descend with drones. She appeared, 10 meters away. A human, at least on the outside, pale skin, bald head, no armor, just a black bodysuit with no insignia. Her eyes were solid white. Her voice, when she spoke, was like water over metal. "You were never meant to live this long," she said. I didn't answer. She didn't need one. "You've destabilized an entire quadrant of Coalition space," she said. 10 species have issued formal war declarations. 8 others are considering alliance with rogue systems in response to your survival. "Good," I said, spitting blood. "Let them all burn." "You misunderstand. This isn't about punishment. This is about balance." She raised one hand. I fired the tower. Nothing happened. She smiled. "You've been severed." And that's when I felt it. The connection to the planet, to the memory, to the glyphs. Gone. She wasn't a soldier. She was an anchor, Coalition's oldest weapon. She didn't destroy threats. She unmade their link to power, and she was here to reduce me to nothing. "You think you're special," she said, stepping closer. "But you're just a mistake, a side effect, something the galaxy will scrub clean before anyone remembers your name." My knees buckled. The world swam. She stood over me, eyes glowing, and she made a mistake. She touched me, and the entity woke up, not fully, just a flicker. But it was enough. I caught her wrist, she gasped, and I pushed back, not with energy, not with weapons, with memory. I showed her Earth, the slums, the kids starving in steel corridors, the men dying with tools in their hands, not weapons. The families burned out of their homes when the Coalition decided they'd had enough space. I showed her the truth. And for a moment, her smile vanished. Then I drove my fist into her throat. She hit the ground hard. The connection snapped back like an elastic band. The towers lit up, and I roared so loud the sky cracked. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun. She didn't die, even after I cracked her throat, fractured her spine, and dumped what was left of her body into the glowing rift the towers had carved in the earth. She didn't die. Her eyes stayed open, unblinking, empty, white as snow and just as cold. Her mouth twitched once as she vanished into the pit, lips mouthing a word I didn't catch. I don't know if she was cursing me, praying, or laughing. Maybe all three, maybe none. But her body was gone. The anchor was broken, and my connection to the world snapped back into place like a noose tightening around a neck. Only this time, I was the one holding the rope. The towers roared to life again. Energy flooded the valley. Obsidian split. Symbols burned red across the sky like runes tattooed into the clouds. And far above, in orbit, the coalition ships hesitated. Not for long, but long enough. They knew now. They knew the planet had chosen a side, and it wasn't theirs. I could feel them debating between scorched earth protocol or full retreat. Neither was good. One would kill me. The other would bury this place again, like they had centuries ago. But a third option was already moving through the stars toward us. And this one, they hadn't debated. They'd decided on it long ago. Project Revenant. It hit the system like a dark sun, not a ship, not a fleet, but a thing. Massive. Crude. Black metal latticed with bone and synth veins. A broken weapon they'd never dared unleash until now. It didn't descend. It didn't fly. It fell. Right through the void. A kilometer-wide sarcophagus of screaming AI minds and the remains of failed entity hosts, wired together into one abomination. An artificial being built not to fight me, but to consume me. They didn't want to erase me anymore. They wanted to harness me. I watched it enter the upper atmosphere, trailing ash, fire, and what looked like blood. The planet shuddered as it approached. Towers cracked. Memory systems flickered. Even the glyphs pulsing under my skin dimmed, just slightly, and the voice returned. But this time, it wasn't the entity. It was someone else. A voice like mine, but deeper, scarred, burned, twisted. I was the first. They said I failed, but I survived longer than all of them, until they tore my mind apart to build this husk. The voice came from the Revenant itself. It wasn't just a machine. It was a man. Or it used to be. A human, bound in metal, infected with memory, programmed with pain. We were alike. But he had chosen obedience. I had chosen defiance. "You carry the key," he said. "Give it to me, and I will make your death painless." I laughed. Blood ran down my lips. My knuckles cracked. "Painless doesn't interest me." "Then you will scream until the stars go dark." The Revenant hit the ground less than a mile away. The impact tore a canyon into the planet's surface. Fire erupted in every direction. Chunks of earth flew skyward. Entire memory towers split apart and vanished into ash. Then, silence. Then, footsteps. I descended the ridge to meet him. The ground under my boots cracked with every step. My hands twitched, half-controlled. The entity inside me knew what was coming, and for once it didn't try to break free. It waited. Watched. And when I reached the edge of the crater, the Revenant stood tall, towering at 10 feet. A fusion of steel and bone, ribs exposed, skull reinforced with alloy, and at its center, a human heart. Still beating. Still real. His face was a mask of pale synthetic flesh, stretched over a jaw lined with servos. But his eyes, his real eyes, remained. Tired, angry, almost familiar. "You were one of us," I said quietly. "Weren't you?" "I am what you will become," he replied. "No," I said, clenching my fists. "You're what I'll destroy." He didn't speak again. The ground exploded. He moved faster than anything that size should. A blur of sharpened limbs and kinetic strikes. His first blow shattered a ridge behind me. His second caught my ribs and sent me flying. I hit the rocks hard, rolled, got up coughing blood. He was already on me again. This wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. But then, I stopped holding back. I opened myself. The glyphs ignited along my spine. My skin cracked, black veins glowing red. The entity inside me screamed with joy. I grabbed his next punch mid-air and twisted. His entire forearm snapped sideways like wet wood. He didn't flinch, didn't scream, but I heard the faintest grunt. I slammed my fist into his chest once, and the world bent. A shockwave flattened the crater. Dust blew away for miles. Towers reactivated. Sand liquefied into molten glass. He staggered. For the first time, he looked surprised. And beneath that, I saw something else. Jealousy. "You weren't chosen," I said. "You were built. And you'll die alone," he hissed. "Not alone," I growled. Then the sky opened again, not with ships, not with weapons, but with signals, from Earth, from the slums, the old colonies, the forgotten systems filled with humans deemed too broken to rise. And yet, they rose. The pulse I'd sent out through the towers had reached them. I felt them light up, one by one, men, women, survivors. They were waking, all across the stars, fused, broken, touched by the same entity, but still alive, still human. And they were coming. The Revenant sensed it, too. His movements grew frantic, less calculated, his blows more brutal but less precise. He knew he was running out of time. And that's when I ended it. I let him grab me, pull me in close. I let him drive a spike through my gut. And as his blade dug deep, I whispered, "Your mistake was thinking I feared the pain." He looked confused. Then I pressed my hand to his heart, and I gave him everything, all the memory, all the rage, all the humanity. He screamed. His voice tore through the sky, a sound so unnatural the birds overhead fell dead mid-flight. His chest split open, the metal groaned, the circuits melted, and then he was gone. Just a man again, flesh and blood kneeling in ash, crying. I just wanted to matter," he whispered. I nodded. "You did." Then I let him go. No death, no execution, just mercy. The galaxy had forgotten how to offer that. I hadn't. I stood there for hours, staring up at the sky. Ships remained above, but none dared descend. The memory towers kept pulsing, and all across space, humans were lighting up. My comm pinged, a message, no name, no origin, just one line. "You showed us. Now we're ready." I exhaled. Not relief, not peace, but readiness. The war had changed. We weren't victims anymore. We were witnesses. And soon, we'd be judges. The silence didn't last. It never does. Not when the galaxy is watching. Not when the powerful are afraid. Not when you've made yourself impossible to ignore. The Revenant was gone, his body buried beneath layers of cooling ash and shattered alloy. His screams still echoed in the scorched craters left behind. The towers, once dormant relics, were now constant, throbbing with pulse light that reached into deep space. Not just a signal, a summon, and humanity had answered. The rogue signals from the fringe systems were converging, old scavenger ships, hidden colonies that the Coalition declared unstable decades ago, orbital junkyards reactivating engines that hadn't run in 100 years, cities built in asteroid belts, stations hidden inside mining tunnels. They were waking up, and they were heading here, not to worship, not to serve, but to fight. I stood on the highest ridge above the breach. The wind howled like it wanted to peel the skin off my bones. The glyphs on my spine buzzed with energy, humming in sync with the core of the planet beneath my feet. It was no longer just a forbidden world. It was ours. I wasn't alone anymore. My comm crackled, patched through a relay of scavenged satellites and twisted tech no one understood. Is it true? The voice said. A man, rough, older, earthborn. Yeah, I replied. It's all true. There was a pause. And you're the one who touched it. Didn't have much choice. Another pause. Then a low, almost reverent, good. The coalition didn't retreat. They doubled down. Cowards never run when cornered. They bare their teeth and dig deeper. The fleet above me grew by the hour. More dreadnoughts, more cloaked cruisers, more silent killers circling like carrion birds. Dozens of species, all of them sworn to the same code, containment at all costs. But they'd waited too long. The costs were theirs now. 3 days passed like minutes. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. My body was different, not immortal, not invincible, but sustained by something older than food, water, or rest. Purpose. The survivors of humanity, the ones they scattered into refugee blocks, slums, labor camps. They were coming, and I wasn't their leader. I was their proof. That survival meant something. That pain wasn't shame. It was power. Day 4. The sky ripped in half, not from an explosion, but from arrival. Human vessels entered orbit, not military, not organized, but unified. Junkers, freighters, smugglers, modified warships, ancient models from Earth's old fleets, resurrected with spare parts and desperation, and every single one of them flew the same banner. No colors, no flags, just a streak of red spray-painted across the hull, like blood drawn from the first punch, and the message was clear. We're still here. Coalition comms lit up with panic. Unregistered vessels detected. Illegal systems breaching treaty space. Execute protocol blackout. I smiled. They still thought it was about laws. They didn't get it. This wasn't rebellion. This was resurrection. The first shot came from a coalition cruiser. Predictable. A warning strike across the upper atmosphere. A mistake. The freighter that took the hit didn't fall. It transformed. Armor plates peeled open. Cannons emerged from false cargo containers. Reverse-engineered weapons, illegally modified warp blasters, some of it powered by forbidden tech from other fallen civilizations. That freighter returned fire, and the sky erupted. Ships collided in chaos. Drones swarmed in by the thousands. Coalition satellites blinked out of existence one by one. Space itself burned. Bodies and metal rained down like comets. And I stood on the ridge as it all unfolded. My hands tingled. My veins pulsed. I could feel the deaths, the rage, the momentum. It was time. I stepped forward and summoned the planet itself. The glyphs obeyed. The towers opened. The gate unsealed. It had always been buried. Not a creature, not a god, but a core. A living memory engine, ancient beyond reckoning, alien beyond logic. It didn't think like us. It remembered instead of dreamed. It had no identity, only purpose, and its purpose was release. It had been locked in this world for eons. I was the first to survive contact. Now I was its key. The gate opened with no sound, just a void swallowing the light around it. Colors inverted. Time trembled. And in the pit at the planet's center, the memory bled out in waves. Not data, not thought, but presence. The entity inside me, dormant all this time, rose, not to devour, not to destroy, but to stand with me. And I finally understood. It had never wanted to conquer. It wanted a vessel who could withstand it, a being who could choose, not submit, not worship, but wield. I let it in, fully, and for the first time I became what they feared. Not a monster, not a weapon, but a mirror. Reflecting back to them every crime, every betrayal, every forgotten soul they buried beneath bureaucracy and silence. I stood on the edge of the pit and raised my arms, and the dead rose with me, not ghosts, not magic, but memory forms, echoes of fallen humans who had touched the entity before me, those who didn't survive, but left pieces of themselves behind. They formed behind me, men, women, children, worn, broken, but not afraid. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Our pain was the language, and we spoke it with fire. The final battle wasn't between fleets, it wasn't between armies, it was between what is remembered and what the powerful want forgotten. The entity flooded the sky with living memory, searing waves of pure emotion. Entire coalition ships fell apart mid-orbit, their crews consumed by overwhelming guilt, rage, fear. Captains wept at their consoles. AI units shut down rather than process the input. We didn't kill them. They destroyed themselves. Not all, though. Some fought harder, burned brighter, fired until their cores overheated. But they were outnumbered, outmatched, and worst of all, outlived. One by one, their ships broke apart. One by one, the humans rose. The last dreadnought fled. It didn't get far. A wave of memory hit it like a tsunami. Its engines failed. Its crew screamed. And then there was silence. The sky was ours. The planet pulsed with quiet. The towers dimmed. I fell to my knees at the edge of the crater and let the energy drain from my body. Not all of it, but enough. The entity withdrew, satisfied. Not because it won, because we had chosen to live. Behind me, the survivors gathered. Hundreds, maybe thousands. No uniforms, no leaders, no speeches. Just people, watching, breathing, existing. The first free humans this galaxy had seen in 100 years. And I knew what they wanted. Not revenge, not conquest, but space. To rebuild, to remember, to matter. I walked to the center of the ridge one last time. I activated the glyph embedded in my chest, and I sent a message to every system, every colony, every race that had ever tried to break us. Just 3 words, burned across the stars. We remember you. Then I turned off the signal, and I walked away. Not a hero, not a savior, just a man who refused to die on a forbidden world that finally found its voice,